Hi Nat5, so we're on the Life on Earth unit, we're on the last key area from this, and we're looking at mutation. Right, so we'll start off with the definition. A mutation is a random change in the genetic material. In fact, just even if you said change in the genetic material, okay, but it is random, okay. And we can increase the chances of this happening by using something called a mutagen. Now, basically anything that you have heard of as being potentially nasty and potentially causing cancer, so something that's a carcinogen, that'll be a mutagen, okay? So it could be environmental, so that would be things like X-rays, UV rays, gamma rays, anything that would be ionizing radiation. High temperatures will also increase the rate of mutation, or it could be chemical, so you could have, as I say, anything that you think of that could be said to be nasty and potentially causes cancer and is a chemical, that's a chemical mutagen. So you might think, well, there's no way we ever want mutations in. This is going to wreck our DNA, it's going to change what's going on, we don't know what's happening with it. But the reality is that it's the raw material, it's the new stuff, it's the chance for something new to have occurred inside our species, or in any species, and it gives you variation. Okay, and the mutation is the only way that we get new variation in. Everything else that we have that potentially mixes it is really useful. So the decision as a species to be sexual reproduction as opposed to asexual would mean that you at least mix up the different forms of the genes that you have available in the population, and that's really useful as well. But new variation is going to come from mutation. And it is really the only new source that we have of new alleles, so new forms of genes that can occur. And then once you've got them, then we have the potential for selection. Because if you don't have any difference, if everything is exactly the same, then there's no reason why one particular member of a species would survive relative to another one. Okay, it would just be chance. But if you have differences, then it becomes which one is advantaged by that difference. Okay, and that will mean that in competition, they're more likely to win out and survive and pass on their forms of the genes. And over time, and this is generations of time, then selection can push to evolution. So there are three types of mutation, okay, and you will look at these if you go into higher, you'll look at these in a lot of detail. So I'm just saying that this is the reality. You can have tiny ones, so like you can shift a base, so literally your code might be reading something like this in a gene and then it ends up like this. One tiny change, just one letter, that would be a base change. Now that might do nothing and it might totally change what's going on. Okay, it could be entire genes, so that means you could shift where genes are, or it could be entire chromosomes, so an entire chromosome might be changed in terms of an extra one or losing ones. So when we look at mutations, or when you look at mutations, what you need to be able to do is talk about them in terms of these particular words. So you have to say whether the mutation is neutral, whether it's disadvantageous, or whether it is advantageous. So if it's neutral, what we're saying is neither up nor down in terms of selective advantage. If it's disadvantageous, what you're saying is that is not going to help them, and if it's advantageous, you're saying that will help them. Okay. Okay, so on the next slide, which obviously the video just means in a little bit, there's a card sort, and what I want you to do is just pause it and then try and decide if you think that for each of these things, would it be an advantage? Like, would this actually mean that if this organism ended up with that mutation, they potentially are going to do better because of it? Okay, disadvantageous, it puts them at a disadvantage. They're not going to do so well out of it. Or maybe just saying, well, neutral. It's not making any real difference to them. Okay, so when this comes to the next slide on this, pause it, make your decisions, and then I'll talk through what I would say for them. Okay, right, so let's look at the first one. So we've got a photosynthetic algae mutant that can grow in the dark using acetate as a carbon source. Well, anything that can make something grow where other things can't has got to be an advantage. So this one is going to be able to grow and do better. Okay, bacterium producing penicillinase, which is the enzyme that breaks down penicillin. So that means penicillin, which we know is a antibiotic which would kill bacteria, this bacteria is now producing an enzyme which breaks down the chemical that was killing it. That's definitely going to be an advantage. Okay, and then we've got fungus producing penicillin. So this is actually how we originally found penicillin. So penicillin is produced by fungus to stop competition round about it. That's another advantage. Okay, right, next row we've got mutation of the apolipoprotein. There we go. In humans, the mutant form moves cholesterol in the bloodstream faster. Now, that could be an advantage because it could actually get rid of cholesterol quicker from the bloodstream. It could be a disadvantage because we've got more cholesterol moving in the bloodstream. So I would actually need to have some more information about exactly what's going on with that one. Okay. In humans, some individuals have 2 different colours of eyes. That doesn't mean anything, really. Mutation on the red-green colour gene on chromosome X in women creates a tetrachromat that can see colours others cannot. Don't really think that's going to make much of a difference at all. There is a potential somehow, if it worked for some particular reason, it might be advantageous. It certainly wouldn't be disadvantageous. Mutation in the p53 gene linked to many cancers. This is not a good thing to have. Okay, definitely a disadvantageous thing. Mutation in pigmentation pathways creates albino animals. Now, that's probably not going to be good for them because in most animals there is reason for the colour that you are. Quite often it's a camouflage. It might be something that's to do with hunting. So being albinos is probably not a good thing for them. It also quite often affects eyesight because the pigments in the eyes are also affected. Okay, there is potentially, if it's a pet, nothing. Okay, mutation in the LRP5 gene in humans increases bone density. Well, might make you a little bit stronger, less likely to break your bones, less likely to suffer from osteoporosis when you're older. Could also have nothing to do with it. Okay, we've got mutation increases the rate at which fur grows in a polar bear. Well, you would think that's probably going to help them out. It's going to keep them warmer. Base substitution in a gene, A for G. We have no idea. It's kind of a trick question. It might do nothing. Okay, it might give you a gene which actually is better, or it might give you one that is just awful. You just don't know. Mutation that increases ovulation, so increases the litter size in mice. This is another one that's quite difficult to say. As a species, this might mean that we can overpopulate quicker, as it were. But it also might mean that increased litter size means that you get less available for each of the litter. So actually you might end up with smaller offspring, and some of them might actually be disadvantaged. So where this fits in might actually be a lot more to do with the environment. Okay, so all you need to be able to do is just kind of think it through and give a reason for why you would go with advantageous, disadvantageous, neutral, and that's mutations.